Being able to copy another card's effect is something very rarely seen in Yu-Gi-Oh! But whenever it pops up, it's usually a complete game changer. And in this video, we'll be going over some of the best cards in the game which have abused this seldom used mechanic for all it's worth. And at number 10, we have Serial Spell. This is a quick play which must be activated in response to the activation of your normal spell card. It discards your whole hand for cost, and then this card's effect becomes the same as that card. Many of the strongest cards in the game are normal spells, and Serial Spell is one of the few options you have to get extra value out of cards that are either limited or have hard once per turn restrictions. However, the value this card could provide is heavily hindered by how hard it is to set up, since you need both the card you want and Serial Spell in your hand, as well as the heavy cost of losing your whole turn in the process. Historically, the only decks that wanted to trigger their spells twice like this were trying to abuse a game-winning effect like Dimension Fusion. Generally, it was more efficient to go with cards such as Magical Stone Excavation and Spell Reproduction, which would just get the spell back to your hand though. These two were much more versatile due to not having a strict activation timing, and even if they also do both require 2 discards for their effects, that's still better than having to dump your whole hand most of the time. With all of this said, this card does have a pretty unique niche over these two, which allowed it to see play in Empty Jar. That deck aims to deck out your opponent by looping the effect of cards like Morphing Jar, which make both players discard their hand and then draw 5 cards. One of the best ways to get the finishing blow in was to combo this card with Card Destruction, which makes both players discard their hand and draw as many cards as they discarded. Due to the way the card works, you can't use it if your opponent has less cards in their deck than their hand, since you wouldn't be able to fully resolve the effect. However, if you use the card when your opponent's deck has twice as many cards as in their hand or less, you can activate Serial Spell and Chain Link too. And what will happen is you will discard your hand for cost, then apply Hand Destruction twice. You'll resolve the effect twice with no cards in hand, which does nothing, but your opponent will have to attempt to resolve it as much as possible and thus stack out. This is certainly one of the flashiest combos you can get hit by in GOAT format to this day. Though even in that deck, Serial Spell is still a 1 of and Spell Reproduction is a 3 of, but that's still enough relevancy for the 10th spot on this list. And at number 9, we have Neo-Spacian Dark Panther. This is a level 3 Dark Beast monster with 1000 attack, which can once per turn target a face-up monster your opponent controls, and then until the end phase it replaces its name and effect with those of the targeted monster. Dark Panther saw play a couple of times in the past. Its usage almost always being associated with Rescue Cat. The pre-errata version of the card could bring out 2 level 3 or lower beast monsters from your deck without negating their effects, and Panther was one of the best going second cards you could bring out. The first instance of people playing Rescue Cat for this specifically was after Gladiator Beast came out. People played this package in the side deck for the Gladiator Beast mirror match, since when going second you could use Rescue Cat to bring out Test Tiger and Dark Panther. From there, Dark Panther could be used to copy your opponent's Glad name, so that Test Tiger's effect could then be used to shuffle it back into the deck and then search out one of your Gladiator Beasts. This allowed you to use Bestiari and Murmillo to pop either a spell, a trap, or monster off of a single card without using your battle phase. Around a year after this, the release of X-Saber Airbellum, a level 3 Beast Warrior tuner with a pretty decent effect, would then enable the short-lived Synchro Cat decks where Dark Panther would be a staple yet again. In these strategies, Rescue Cat gave you a 1-card combo into Synchros like Goyo Guardian, and Panther was one of the best non-tuner level 3s available. If the opponent left their boss monster in the field, you could punish them severely by using their effects against them, and there were many of them being thrown around that format, such as Dark Arm Dragon and Judgment Dragon, both of which could allow you to pop your opponent's board. Unfortunately though, these kinds of Rescue Cat toolbox decks wouldn't last very long, as the card would soon be put to 1, making it not worth filling your deck with targets when you weren't likely to see the card in a duel, and Dark Panther wouldn't find a home for itself ever again. And at number 8, we have Traptrix Rafflesia. This is a generic rank 4 earth plant monster with an effect that makes it unaffected by trap effects while it has material. It makes it so your trap monsters other than Rafflesia cannot be targeted or destroyed by battle or card effects. Though she came out long after Traptrix were part of the metagame, Rafflesia could be argued to be the most impactful cards the archetype ever had. On release, this card provided one of the strongest payoffs for making a rank 4 in the game, as there were tons of good whole trap cards you could copy. It also just so happened that this card came out alongside the cards that made Perform Mage Performapals, or Pepe, and since their tier 0 deck was so proficient at spamming out rank 4s, this card became a huge part of the metagame overnight. People were either running Bottomless or Time Space Trap Hole as targets to deal with your opponent's Pendulum summons, or Treacherous Trap Hole for a pop 2 that was extremely hard to play around. Even if Pepe would get addressed by the ban list fairly quickly, the hits didn't kill off the deck completely, and Rafflesia would still be part of their end board in the next iteration of the strategy, Draco Pals. From then on, Rafflesia kept seen playing all kinds of strategies with access to rank 4s as one of the biggest interactions you can get off of a couple level 4s in the field, at the small cost of having to play a trap in your deck. However, the risk of drawing into that trap would begin to matter more and more as the game sped up exponentially, which would make this card's usability decline with time. The last time Rafflesia saw play was in Salmon Greats, as a way to play around Nibiru, the Primal Being. Salads have always had a pretty great control strategy, with their biggest flaw being that they were completely unable to play around Nibiru. It would often end on just a token whenever that card was in the meta. Then some Salad players chose to remedy this by playing the Parallel Exceed engine, so they can go into Rafflesia in under 5 summons, and then if your opponent did have a Nibiru, you could use Gravedigger's Trap Hole to negate it. Nowadays, this card might come back to the meta due to the release of new Traptrix support, but only time will tell if it impacts the meta that much. And at number 7, we have Phantom of Chaos. This is a level 4 Dark Fiend monster with 0 attack and defense. It can target an effect monster in your graveyard, banish it, and then this card's name, attack, and effect became the same as the banished monsters. Also, your opponent takes no battle damage from attacks involving this card. Phantom of Chaos has seen play in several graveyard-focused strategies during the early days of Yu-Gi-Oh!, having its first home be Dark Arm Dragon decks. Dad requires you to have exactly 3 dark monsters in your graveyard to be summoned, and Phantom was one of the better ways to manipulate that count. By itself, it banishes a monster, but if you had Dark Greffer, you could easily bin another 2 darks, and if you had a Dad, you could banish darks up until you were all the way down to 3. Outside of that, this card fit like a glove in Light Sword strategies as well. All the cards in the archetype aim to mill cards from your deck to the graveyard, giving Phantom of Chaos a much wider array of targets than you'd usually have. Though what the deck aims to do is set up Judgment Dragon to destroy the whole field, you could basically get the same result by banishing a milled one with the Phantom, with the small drawback of not being able to deal damage with it. However, this card's potential was fully realized in Norlaris Turbo decks. Sky Scourge Norlaris has a pretty difficult to set up summon condition, but it makes up for it with the fact that it allows you to send all cards from both players' hands and field to the graveyard, and then make you draw a card. The way this strategy worked was that you'd copy Norlaris with Phantom and then wipe away the game, while hopefully having set up several graveyard effects like Plex Spreader Zombie and Necro Gardener beforehand. This would be the deck in which Phantom of Chaos was most impactful in. And even if it was only playable at Rogue level for a couple of formats, the card itself still managed to see random specs of play all the way until 2016. And at number 6, we have Numeron Network. This is a field spell which lets you send a Numeron normal spell that meets its activation condition from your deck to the graveyard, and then this effect becomes that spell's effect. It also makes it so the Numeron Xyz monsters you control can activate their effects without detaching materials. Most of the time, the reason why copy effects see play is because of the versatility in being able to access many cards off of a single reason. However, Numeron Network is one of the few exceptions to this rule. It's used pretty much exclusively to apply the effect of the same card, Numeron Calling. This card allows you to special summon 4 Numeron Gate Xyz monsters from your extra deck, but requires you to control no monsters, and they get banished during the end phase. Many people had high hopes for this card when it came out to the TCG, as it had a considerable impact on the OCG where it was often played alongside Eldritch Engine. You are restricted to only summoning 1 more time afterwards, but that meant you could simply go into a big boss monster such as Avermax or Megaclops, and then play control with your full Eldritch Engine. When going second, the gates can be used to OTK very easily too, something which trap decks have always had trouble with. For the TCG, this engine was looking out to be even stronger too, since we still had access to Utopic Zexal, which could be made off of 3 gates and lock your opponent out of the game for a turn. What ended up happening though, is that this engine didn't match up with the pace of our meta very well, and Zexal, the main reason to play it, would be banned not soon after its release anyway. However, after the Numeron cards had fallen off in both the East and West, these cards would go on to become hugely popular in the Master Duel ladder. This is because you could play the deck as a pure going second strategy, focusing on using the gates to OTK and playing hard going second cards like Lava Golem and Lightning Storm. Though the deck isn't very good, having a strategy which clears games quickly and efficiently is great for ladder environments, which makes it a valid choice specifically in that format. And at number 5, we have Gem Knight Master Diamond. This is a level 9 Earthrock fusion monster which takes 3 Gem Knight monsters as its materials. It must first be fusion summoned and gains 100 attack for each Gem Knight monster in your graveyard. And it can, once per turn, banish a level 7 or lower Gem Knight fusion from your graveyard to copy that card's name and effect. Master Diamond is the first card on the ban list so far, as it was limited to 1 to limit the power of the FTK associated with it. Though the Gem Knights have a wide array of fusion monsters which you could copy for a wide variety of effects, the one you'd want to go for every time is Lapis Lazuli, who can foolish a Gem Knight monster to inflict 500 damage to your opponent for each special summon monster on the field. Konami clearly didn't intend for you to FTK with Lazuli, as it has a hard once per turn on its summon. But for some reason, Master Diamond, who can copy its effect, is only a soft once per turn and doesn't have a limit on how many times it can be summoned per turn. The deck had been around for a while, and though it wasn't very good at first, it eventually reached the apex of its playability during Master Rule 4. With Brilliant Fusion and Black Dragon at 3 back in the day, as well as the newly released Gem Knight Phantom Quartz, the deck became consistent enough at FTKing to see some tops at the regional and YCS level. However, after a short burst of success, the deck would eventually get hit into unplayability the years after. Master Diamond itself would get hit to 1 not long after to make proccing Lapis Lazuli's effect multiple times harder, though you could still get around that by using Nightmare Unicorn to shuffle it back into the deck and just bring it out again. Brilliant Fusion got hit to 1 and then banned due to being a great generic extender, and Block Dragon will be banned to curb the power of Adamancipators. Master Diamond remains at 1 since even if it wouldn't be very good at FTKing with all the other hits, Konami generally prefers to be safer than sorry when it comes to these kinds of decks. And though there has been new Gem Knight support, it's all been specifically made to make the FTK not possible anyways. And at number 4, we have Pseudo Space. This is a field spell which has the ability to banish another field spell from your graveyard to replace this card's name and effects with those of that card for this turn. Despite copying field spells, some of the most overtuned pieces of support in the history of the game, Pseudo Space actually flew under the radar for several years. This card's ability to become extra copies of your field spell would come to the forefront with the Monarch FTK. By combining this with the draw power of the Monarch engine, together with generic cards that cycle your deck like Upstart Goblin, the strategy aimed to draw through the whole deck and then kill your opponent with a Life Equalizer plus Magical Explosion. One of the biggest reasons why it could cycle through your whole deck easily was because of the huge field spell engine, comprised of 3 Chicken Game, 3 Pseudo Space, and 3 Terraform. Each Chicken Game being able to give you a draw and a soft once per turn, and both Pseudo Space and Terraforming being extra copies of that card. Putting these cards together with 3 Upstart and 3 Into the Void gives you a 15 card cycle. This made Monarch FTK into one of the most consistent first turn kill strategies to ever be played in competitive settings, and is what got Upstart Goblin limited as well as Chicken Game banned. After a lot of these cards got hit on the ban list, people would experiment a bit again with Pseudo Space and decks with amazing field spells like Spirals and ABC, though it wasn't the most common tech out there. While being able to trigger your field spell search another time sounds great, it's not like you needed this card to do it since Terraforming was still at 3. And it also didn't help that Pseudo Space only copied the effect until the end of the turn, and both Hangar and Resort had very relevant effects during your opponent's turn too. Eventually, with Terraforming going to 1, this card disappeared off the meta completely. And coming in at number 3, we have Infernoid Decatron. This is a level 1 Fire Fiend monster with 500 attack and 200 defense, which when summoned gets to foolish any Infernoid monster except itself, and then it increases its level by the level of the sent monster, and then copies that card's name and effect. It's not very often that a single card can turn an archetype from almost unplayable to a metagame contender, but this is what Decatron did for its peers. For context, the other Infernoid monsters all cannot be summoned except by their own effects, where they need you to banish certain amounts of other Infernoids from your hand or graveyard to bring themselves out. Because of this, the archetype has always had to play ways to fill up their graveyard, be it that grass looks greener or future fusion. Decatron is the closest Noids have to a 1-card starter, and it's a pretty good one at that. Not only will Decatron always have a pretty decent effect, like a monster negate if you sent Devyati, it'll also help fill your graveyard for any other archetypal plays. As the deck's only normal summonable monster, it also lets you play Reasoning, which will hopefully mill a lot of Infernoids before getting to your Decatron and then milling the other one. As what Reasoning does is allow your opponent to declare a level, and then you mill cards from the top of your deck until you find a monster of that level which can be normal summoned or set. And since all the Infernoids cannot be normal summoned or set, they all go to the graveyard except for Decatron. This card's typing and attribute also give it a couple of interesting synergies which were used to their fullest potential back when this was meta. This card being a tuner allowed you to play powerful synchros like Cyframe Lord Omega, and it being a fire with 200 defense lets you play Rekindling as a bomb for the late game, as its effects don't have a once per turn. When it comes to copying effects within its own archetype, you can't really beat Decatron, as its abilities have shaped the whole Infernoid deck around it. The deck would begin to fall off with the limitation of that grass looks greener, and though it came back to the metagame with the release of Layer of Darkness, as it allowed Infernoids to tribute your opponent's monsters for costs, it doesn't really have what it takes to be a player in today's metagame, as every other Infernoid monster that's not Decatron is often a brick in the hand. And at number 2, we have Starving Venom Fusion Dragon. This monster is a level 8 Dark Fusion monster which requires any 2 dark monsters on the field as its materials except for tokens. If this card is fusion summoned, it can gain attack equal to the attack of an opponent's special summoned monster until the end of the turn. Once per turn, it can target a level 5 or higher monster your opponent controls, and then it gains that target's name, and this effect becomes the same as that card's effect. Lastly, if this fusion summon card is destroyed, you destroy all special summon monsters your opponent controls. Starving Venom is actually quite limited in what cards it can take the effects of, but this hasn't stopped it from seeing play in all kinds of decks throughout the years, as it's by far the most popular card on this list. Although this is because of the way people have used it. It would still be played if it was a vanilla monster with no stats. Starving Venom is valuable almost entirely due to its summoning conditions, which are 2 dark monsters on the field, which have made it into the best super polymerization target ever. Dark is the most common attribute in the game, and it'd be impossible to list all of the combo decks which have ended in a couple of these throughout the game's lifespan. For a single discard, Super Poly lets you take away your opponent's sticky monsters and give yourself a body as a bonus. And what a huge bonus it is, as Starving Venom's effects are actually quite decent. If your opponent happens to have any other boss monster out, they can end up with over 5,000 attack and will blow up your opponent's field if they try to remove it. Its copy effect has been most recently relevant when dealing with Adventure Dragon Link boards, which would often end on a Baronne de Fleur. Even if you can't Super Poly Baronne away, this card is a must negate by Baronne, since it can steal its Omni-Negate effect, and since it'll destroy the Baronne when it's negated by her, it allows you to trade 1 for 3 into their board. This card has fallen off a bit recently, because just playing Garura and Mud Dragon allows you to cover what this card did and much more. but it's still going to come up every so often as long as super polymerization remains legal in the TCG. And finally, at number 1, we've got Supreme King Dragon Starving Venom. This level 8 Dark Dragon fusion takes 2 Dark Pendulum monsters and must either be fusion summoned or special summoned by treating its materials under your control. Once per turn, it can target another monster in the field or in the graveyard, and then this card's name becomes that monster's original name. This effect gets replaced with that monster's effect, and for the rest of the turn, all your monsters inflict piercing battle damage. Supreme King may seem very similar to the other Starving Venom at first glance, but there's a reason why this one is banned and that one isn't. This card does have a slightly less generic summoning condition, and so can't be used for Super Poly as well. But instead, it's very easily brought out in Pendulum decks through Contact Fusion. This card was tailor-made for Pendulum Magicians, the archetype which abused it the most before it got the boot, as pretty much every single one of its members is a valid target for Starving Venom. At first, it was played simply as a really good utility card, as it could let you reuse the then limited Ignister Prominence if you'd already gone through yours, or be great into boards by copying the effect of something like Ultimate Conductor Tyranno. This was all fine, but what really broke this card at first was the release of Heavy Metal Foes Electromite. Not only did it bolster Pendulum strategies as a whole when it was legal, it was a pretty good target for Supreme King to copy to set up your board. Electromite was already such a good card that going through multiple copies of it in a single turn was something mini combos did already. And being able to get even more copies through Starving Venom only improved the end board of Pendulums further. However, the real problem would come around once the FTK variant of the deck started popping up. Since Supreme King is completely unrestricted in what it can copy, you can use this effect to get the effects of an Independent Nightingale brought out through Instant Fusion. Since this card inflicts damage based on its level, and it's level 8, you'd be doing 4,000 points of burn damage off of any couple of Pendulum bodies. As is common in most FTKs, this card also lacks a hard once per turn on any of its effects, so you only need a little bit of extra effort to get to 8,000. Konami would end up addressing it by banning Supreme King, and it remains on the ban list to this day as another degenerate tool that they don't want Pendulums to have access to, not unlike its partner in crime, Electromite. This isn't the only FTK enabler on this list, but it's by far the best of them at doing what it does, and fittingly, it has the best and most generic effect copying ability than any of the cards in the game. Alright, and that's the list. We've left off the Tyrant Neptune off the list because it's on our internal ban list of cards not to talk about anymore, but if you happen to know of any other cards you may have missed, or have any ideas for future videos just like this one, please let us know down in the comments below.